This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Senior Chinese and American officials to meet in Switzerland. Whistleblower accuses Facebook of stoking divisions and harming children. And Mali summons France's ambassador as tensions between the two countries escalate. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers. Here are more stories making headlines this hour. In business news, MTN Uganda to float 20% of its shares in the country's securities exchange. And in sports, 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers return with African champions Algeria hosting Niger in Blida. Well, senior Chinese and American officials are scheduled to meet in Switzerland today. A Chinese delegation headed by senior diplomat Yang Jieqi landed in Zurich to meet the U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. It was the first face-to-face meeting since their summit in Alaska in March earlier this year. Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden had agreed to the meeting during a phone call last month. The meeting comes at a time of heightened tensions between the two countries over a range of issues. Well, for more on this, we're joined by Giles Gibson, who is in Zurich for us. Giles, so good to see you. What are the main issues on the agenda of this meeting?
Well, both sides have given us very few details about what they're actually going to be discussing in that convention center just behind me. The Chinese Foreign Ministry saying simply that they're going to be talking about China-US relations. The White House were being a little bit more specific, saying that they're going to be talking about how to responsibly manage competition between the two countries. As you were saying, this is the highest level summit that we've seen between Beijing and Washington since those talks that took place in the US state of Alaska back in March. This time round, we've got on the Chinese side Yang Jieqi, and then from the US side, you've got the National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. These talks are also coming just days after we saw the US Trade Representative Catherine Tai revealing details about this months-long look into US-China trade policy. Catherine Tai accusing the Chinese of not meeting the terms of that Phase 1 trade deal that was done with the previous Trump administration. There's also a lot of concern in Washington this week about Chinese aircraft entering what Taiwan considers to be its air defense zone. However, we did hear from US President Joe Biden on Tuesday talking about, or saying specifically, this is a quote, will abide by the Taiwan agreement, presumably with those words meaning the One China policy.
Thank you so much for all that, Giles Gibson, speaking to us from Zurich. Well, at the United Nations, a Chinese diplomat is raising concerns about nuclear weapons, saying multilateral arms control are at a crucial crossroads.
This year marks the 30th anniversary of the end of the Cold War. 30 years have passed, but the Cold War cloud has not yet dissipated. The United States has been keen on creating an imaginary enemy and upgrading its nuclear arsenal. Under the pretext of responding to threats from China and Russia, the U.S. has pushed forward with the construction of its global anti-ballistic missile systems, seeking to deploy land-based medium-range missiles in the Asia-Pacific region and Europe. It has violated the oath of not engaging in a new Cold War policy by cooperating with the United Kingdom and Australia on developing nuclear submarines. These actions undermine the strategic mutual trust among major powers, stimulates the arms race, exacerbates regional tensions, and harms the international treaty on the non-proliferation of nuclear weapons.
Well, the U.S. Secretary of State is visiting France amid tensions between the allies. Antony Blinken met with the French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris on Tuesday. It's Macron's first meeting with an American official since relations soured last month after Australia canceled a submarine deal with France in favor of one with the U.S. and the U.K. France says the visit will help restore confidence between the two sides. On Tuesday, Macron said that he was ready to re-engage with Washington.
I just believe in facts. I do hope, I do think it's feasible, I do think it's more productive for both of us. I will see. And I think we scheduled to discuss together mid-October. We will catch up during the G20. And I think it would be the right occasion to see how we can re-engage very concretely. My point is not, honestly, I don't, it's not an issue about words or perception. It's an issue about facts and what to do together.
Well, a whistleblower who worked for Facebook has told U.S. lawmakers that the social media giant fuels division, harms children, and urgently needs to be regulated. Nathan King brings us the details.
It's not even the middle of the week here in Washington, but it's so far been a terrible week for Facebook and its related apps. We had that outage which cut off billions of users at the beginning of the week, and now testimony here on Capitol Hill from the whistleblower, Frances Howard. Now, she has appeared in the Wall Street Journal with her testimony, documents taken from the company that were widely available on 60 Minutes as well. And basically, she points a damning picture of the choices facing Facebook executives from Mark Zuckerberg on down. Essentially, she says profits were put over people, that the algorithm does not detect more than 10% of the hate speech that they're meant to root out. She was part of the election monitoring unit that led up to January 6th here, of course. And of course, there's going to be hearings, not just here in Washington, but in Brussels with the European Union, in London and elsewhere. There are 3 billion unique Facebook users globally a month, so this matters. And she really opened her testimony by saying, look, this is not a choice, as Facebook says, between free speech and hate speech. This is something that Facebook could control if it could just dampen a bit of its profits.
Facebook wants you to believe that the problems we're talking about are unsolvable. They want you to believe in false choices. They want you to believe that you must choose between a Facebook full of divisive and extreme content or losing one of the most important values our country was founded upon, free speech. I am here today to tell you that's not true. These problems are solvable. A safer, free speech respecting, more enjoyable social media is possible.
You are a 21st century American hero, warning our country of the danger for young people, for our democracy, and our nation owes you just a huge debt of gratitude.
Essentially, she said, the algorithm is key. It decides everything. Advertisements are unleashed on Facebook, largely with just a machine saying yes, very few people. That they have skipped over evidence, as shown in the Wall Street Journal, that 30% plus of teenage girls feel worse about their bodies after being on the app Instagram. It is quite an indictment for a company that essentially controls speech, not just here often in the US, but around the world as well. There's going to be huge implications. There is even talk about making Facebook responsible for its own algorithm, responsible for its own machines, which internal documents say encourage negative engagement because it drives more traffic than positive engagement, like sharing photos of grandma. And one bit of testimony hit me as the father of a 14-year-old boy, that basically a lot of people feel that the last thing teenage kids feel at night is negativity spread by the platform Instagram just before they go to bed. That's a shame. Nathan King, CGTN, outside the US Congress.
Well, social media has brought many benefits. It's also argued that there are harmful effects. Earlier, we spoke with Stephen Musyoka. He is a digital media specialist at the Aga Khan University in Nairobi. We began by asking him if social media could be effectively regulated.
It's a gray area. You can't regulate social media because even the rules we have, the existing rules by the different authorities, they're still gray. And that is why you find people are, able to do whatever they want. We have incidents, of fraud and all that using social media. It becomes very hard to regulate. And it just stays, it's still a gray area. But however, what we always advocate for as people who've been in this space is for self-regulation. And we also do a lot of consumer education where you need to teach people a lot of things about social media, what are the effects of if you engage in this kind of behavior and all that. Because as a country, we're going into the general elections very soon. And when you start talking about regulating social media, you'll actually end up with a huge backlash. Right now, a lot of politicians are using it. A lot of corporates are also using it. So it's a gray area. However, what we need to advocate for is proper use of social media, a lot of consumer education, and people get to know what is right and what is wrong. We've seen it. Even Facebook was in hot soup a while back, whereby data, there was a lot of issues to do with data breach. So the wider the internet penetration gets, also the huge, we end up having a higher risk on this. So there's room for a lot of negative, a lot of backlash, a lot of hate speech. So let's say it's a double-edged sword, because you have on one end, as a country, you're developing, you're having a lot of people accessing internet. On the other hand, people realize all I just need to do to spread, hate is just start a conversation on WhatsApp, and it spreads like, bushfire. And the fact that everyone now has, let's say, almost everybody has access to WhatsApp. There's a lot of fake news circulating. All I just need to do is to come up with a fake poster. You've seen people editing headlines, newspaper headlines, and we need to do a lot of a consumer education on how do you spot fake news, how do you follow up with something if you see it out there. So the risk is high, and as we go into the general election, you will be getting more and more fake stories, more and more phishing links. So we just have to embrace for this phase come next year as a country.
Mali's Foreign Minister Abdoulaye Diop has summoned France's ambassador to Bamako. That's following comments made by President Emmanuel Macron questioning the legitimacy of the Malian authorities overseeing a transition to elections after 2 coups in just over a year. Officials in Mali say France's remarks are unfriendly, disagreeable, and are likely to harm the development of friendly relations between the two countries. Mali's foreign minister has called for the two sides to take a constructive approach and prioritize countering terrorism. Tensions have been rife since France announced that it was drawing down its military presence in Operation Barkhane, which is the counter-terrorism mission in the Sahel region. Well, over in southern Africa, the leaders of the Southern African Regional Bloc SADC have agreed to extend a troop deployment in Mozambique. That's to help the government fight an Islamic State-linked insurgency concentrated in the northern province of Cabo Delgado. The decision was made at a SADC summit in Pretoria, South Africa. The SADC troop deployment was initially for 3 months and was due to end on October the 15th. Top officials of the regional bloc are yet to disclose how long the extension is approved for. Well, the World Food Programme says it has completed its first round of food delivery in Ethiopia's Amhara and Afar regions. The UN agency released footage of food being distributed from one of its warehouses. The delivery of food comes as a conflict rages on in northern Ethiopia. According to WFP, a lack of supplies and challenges caused by the conflict have impacted aid distribution in Tigray. The food program reports that since May of this year, it has delivered aid to over 2.4 million people in Tigray and to almost 300,000 people in Amhara and Afar. Several of those receiving aid are escaping the growing conflict.
We came here by foot. It happened very suddenly. We had to run away to escape the fighters. There was no means of transportation. The braver people managed to travel by vehicle. As we were on foot, we had to cross a river that could have drowned us, but some people helped us across, as there were children with us. It was very challenging. Some people were injured during our escape, and we had to hide in villages along the way.
As conflict spreads across northern Ethiopia, it's having a very real impact on the families caught up in its path with food insecurity rising. WFP is expanding its operations across northern Ethiopia to meet these growing needs, and it's absolutely vital that we're able to reach all of the communities where people are in need of food assistance before we have a humanitarian catastrophe on our hands.
Meanwhile, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, violence and access constraints in the east of that country continue to hamper humanitarian operations. That's according to Bintou Keita, the head of the UN stabilization mission in the DRC. Keita was briefing the UN Security Council. She highlighted the challenges MONUSCO is facing on the ground. Security and protection of civilians in the eastern part of the DRC remain the mission's top priorities. MONUSCO has stepped up its efforts to support the armed forces, the police forces, and the judicial authorities in order to restore authority in the North Kivu and Ituri provinces. The UN mission wants to help the DRC consolidate democracy ahead of elections.
As we approach the renewal of MONUSCO's mandate, I believe that the joint transition plan constitutes a roadmap that can help guide the work of the mission in the coming years and prepare the ground for its orderly and responsible withdrawal. This must not obscure the fact that there is still much to do to silence the guns in the eastern provinces, foster the political dialogue necessary to pave the way for credible and transparent elections in 2023 and support the long-term strengthening of the country's institutions.
700 Chinese peacekeepers have been awarded for their work by the UN. The peacekeepers were part of the UN mission in South Sudan. They received the United Nations Medal for Excellent Service and were commended for the protection they provided to both members of the mission and humanitarian staff. The ceremony, held in the capital Juba, was attended by the head of the UN, Ms. Nicholas Haysom, as well as the Chinese ambassador to South Sudan, Huan Ning.
Specifically, we recognize the impact you've made on the ground through civil-military cooperation, including medical assistance to local residents, a cultural exchange program at the University of Juba, employment outreach in Terekeka, all of which have helped to improve the livelihoods of residents and contributed to sustainable peace in South Sudan.
Let's now first take a short break and return more in Africa Live, including we're bringing you details of why people are living with disabilities are missing out on COVID-19 vaccines in Ghana.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Well, the World Health Organization has pledged to undertake organizational reforms to address issues of sexual abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo. A recent report by an independent commission of inquiry set up by the WHO acknowledged that more than 80 alleged cases of sexual abuse implicating at least 20 WHO employers in the DRC. CGTN's Daniel Arab Moy reports.
The World Health Organization's weak internal justice system is reported to have exposed issues of sexual abuse in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The alleged cases of sexual exploitation against women and girls date back to the 2018 Ebola outbreak in the country. The WHO has moved in swiftly to undertake reforms to make its systems more transparent.
We thank the survivors for their courage in coming forward, and the Director General has promised swift and immediate action to address the recommendations of the Independent Commission. And these actions will include provision of support and justice for the victims. It will include addressing management and staff failures, and in also a wholesome change or reform of the organization structures and culture when it comes to prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse.
Investigations to establish the facts surrounding the alleged cases of sexual abuse are still ongoing.
The independent commission did recommend that further investigation be done to identify individual responsibilities for the failure to activate investigative procedures.
The World Health Body announced a series of new initiatives to tackle sexual harassment at all levels of WHO. This will involve the creation of an independent commission based in Goma, DRC, to prioritize investigations in at least 8 countries. Daniel Arap Moi, CGTN, Nairobi, Kenya.
Well, the UN is warning of a looming water crisis. The UN's weather agency, in its latest report, says water resource management is fragmented and inadequate. Najma Abdurazek has more.
The State of Climate Services 2021 report estimates that up to 5 billion people could have inadequate access to water by 2050. The report was a collaborative effort between the World Meteorological Organization, development agencies and various scientific agencies. And already it warns a significant number of people are being impacted by major water stress.
According to our sister organization FAO, there has been already 2 billion inhabitants of our planet, 1/4 of our planet, where people have been exposed to major water stress. And there's a lack of drinking water and also lack of water for agriculture. And also the water resource management is limited. According to our sister organization UNEP, we have 107 countries which are not managing their water resources in a sustainable way.
The 107 countries are off track for their target to sustainably manage water resources by 2030. The report found major gaps in data in Central Asia and Africa, as well as several island states.
So we should enhance the water resource management, especially in SIDS countries and LDC countries. And we should invest in drought and flooding services, both especially in African countries and Asian countries, and we have also major gaps in observation systems and also in availability of data, and that should be enhanced.
This comes as climate change continues to exacerbate extreme weather-related events like drought and flooding.
And there has been a dramatic increase in the flooding events during the past 20 years, and that increase has been 134%. And we know that because of this current 1 degree warming of the 1.1 degree warming of the planet, we have more humidity in the atmosphere. We have 7% more humidity in the atmosphere because of the current warming, and that's also contributing to the flooding problems. And Asia has been the continent which has been mostly exposed to both the deaths and economic losses related to the flooding.
The report warns the number of people living with water stress is expected to soar due to growing scarcity and population growth. Najma Abdurazak, CGTN.
Well, as mentioned earlier, developing countries like those in Africa are among the most impacted by the major water stresses. Earlier, we spoke with Gibson Kirago, a water and environmental consultant. He spoke about what could be done to avert a water crisis.
We need to call for action for climate adaptation now. What we call in the UNFCCC Convention Article 6 and the Paris Agreement Article 12 has 6 pillars that many governments have not taken seriously. And one of the points are that we need to act now, call action everybody through education. We have to do training in our institutions. We have to create public awareness through media and all government forums. We have to have public access to information on these changes that are taking place Public participation has to take place in international cooperation where the developed countries should participate in helping the developing countries be able to get technology, finances, and even capacity building has to take place at this time, not tomorrow.
Well, since the onset of COVID-19, global food prices have skyrocketed, putting pressure on the world's most fragile economies. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has warned that soaring prices and growing food insecurity could lead to social unrest. CGTN's Yasser Kim takes a look at how Egypt is improving food security for its citizens as it strives to make their lives easier.
It's a daily routine for most low-income Egyptians, buying subsidized bread, a main ingredient of Egyptian meals.
The subsidies are very effective and the loaf of bread is essential. I am married and I have 5 kids. I can't do without it, especially bread. If I want to buy bread, it would cost me £20 outside, but here I get it for £1 or £2.
There are other food items on the ration cards as a social safety net for the predominantly poor population. Aside from subsidies, since 2014, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi has ordered the military outlets to inject huge quantities of food products countrywide at low cost for all Egyptians. The aim is to maintain a balanced price margin in the market amidst rising international commodity prices. The results were apparent as there were no supply shortages of food nor price hikes during the height of the coronavirus pandemic. But there are challenges in the medium and long term to guarantee food security.
The population increases to 2.4% annually to reach 127 million in 2030 from 102 million now. Land and water resources remain fixed. Actually, water flow can drop because of climate change and the threats of the Renaissance Dam. Therefore, there is a big probability that the food gap can widen and self-sufficiency in food tightens.
The state has embarked on mega projects to ensure a steady increase of basic food products for the growing population.
The first dimension the government is focusing on is for horizontal expansion by cultivating desert areas and in new empty land. Since 2015, there's been the cultivation of 2 million fedans project, in addition to the new Delta project, which will add another 2 million fedans in the Alamein and the Al-Daba areas. There are also the greenhouses, about 100,000 basically for agricultural goods. It's been a success so far. For example, exports of fruits and agricultural products increased from 4.5 to 4.8 million tons in 2020 in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic.
The government is also building tens of huge desalination and water treatment plants to provide more water resources for cultivating more land to achieve as much self-sufficiency as possible and to secure a high rate of food security in the future. Yes, Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
As Ghana rolls out COVID-19 vaccines, people living with disabilities are finding it difficult to get to vaccination centers. Activists are concerned that many people living with disabilities may be forgotten as vaccinations continue. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rufai brings us this report from Accra.
Richardson Becheria has been disabled for 30 years after he contracted polio at the age of 5. Despite Ghana beginning its COVID-19 vaccine rollout back in March, he says he's not been able to get the jab.
I use a wheelchair, and usually when you get to this particular sentence, it's not accessible. You are blocked, or there are barriers which restrain people like me.
Ghana has so far fully vaccinated nearly 800,000 people, but there is no data on exactly how many of those people are disabled. Activists are concerned that those with disabilities have not been prioritized in the vaccine rollout.
With this current state of implementation of vaccines, we are very much concerned that it might be or it might lead to a situation where a majority of persons with disability might not have access to the vaccines.
According to government data, nearly 1 million out of Ghana's 30 million people live with a form of disability. Health experts say some disabled people are at a higher risk of COVID-19 infection. The government says it is now considering the needs of persons with disability in the next phase of the vaccine rollout, and special dispensations will be made. Ghana's health service says people with disabilities will not be allowed to join long queues to get their COVID-19 shots at the vaccination centers. But activists want more to be done to get those who cannot go to the centers have access to the vaccines. Richardson Bechiria agrees. He hopes to get his COVID-19 jab when the government begins the next rollout phase next month. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
In our continuing Belt and Road Initiative series, African Voices, we focus on the Ethiopia-Djibouti railway line. The project, which was completed with the support of the People's Republic of China, has contributed significantly to passenger and cargo transport between the neighbors and beyond. And as CGTN's Giram Chala reports, the railway project is a game changer in the region.
Thousands of containers transported from the port of Djibouti to this dry port located just a few kilometers outside of Addis Ababa. Ethiopia's requirements from heavy machinery to everyday goods shipped here. Thanks to the Ethiopia-Djibouti modern railway, a process that lasted days and cost down arm and a leg has been reduced to hours, saved on cost and enhanced safety and efficiency. Ethiopia's history as a landlocked nation has changed once and for all.
Since the independence of Eritrea from Ethiopia, we just happen to be a landlocked country. And this railway especially connects the Djibouti port, which is almost equal in distance to the Assab port. So for us, changing this landlockedness into land-linkedness by railway, professionally, in railway industry terms, we call it land-linkedness. So after having this railway, for us in the industry, we feel that Ethiopia is no more a landlocked country.
There are a lot of containers stored at Djibouti port. So this railway is helping by facilitating the transportation of these stored containers from Djibouti port to the city centers, to Mojo, and also to Ndode, our freight station near to Addis Ababa.
Commissioned about 6 years back with funding and expertise from China, these 700 kilometers rail truck transports passengers and goods every day from the heart of Ethiopia to Djibouti and vice versa.
Other than containers, we also transport very critical commodities like fertilizer, wheat, and also steel.
China's Import and Export Bank injected billions of US dollars into this mega project. Ethiopians have held China for the fact that they, alongside Djiboutians, have reaped big from this key Belt and Road Initiative flagship project.
The Chinese financing came not only with infrastructure building, but they are committed to operate this railway for the initial phase, because this railway is a standard gauge and it is electrically and environment friendly, using very intensive technology. It needs some kind of learning period from the Chinese counterparts.
Beyond this railway, China has proven its commitment to Ethiopia on many other fronts. Aggressive investment in the road, industrial development, and health sectors, to mention just a few.
The Chinese are real friends of Ethiopians, and of course to Africa. The Chinese, their contribution, cannot be explained. We are a true friend of these Chinese people, and the Chinese government is doing a very much encouraging work to help the country.
Ethiopia is eager to see more projects associated with the Belt and Road Initiative as they march together into a prosperous future with shared goals. The story is now becoming similar for the rest of Africa too, when it comes to China's unwavering partnership with respective African nations. From neighboring Kenya to Nigeria and Senegal, the hallmark of people-centered Chinese investment is seen everywhere. Many say an infurious President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative launched in 2013 will transform the world like never been seen before. Group Data CGTN, Addis Ababa, Ethiopia.
Well, it's time now for us to take a short break and return your business news, including mobile operator MTN Uganda to float 20% of its shares on the country's securities exchange.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Accra is my kind of city. That's because when I'm here, I feel like I'm back home in Lagos or Abidjan, which are two of the major cities I grew up in.
Business in Africa is high risk.
After about a decade covering business news on the continent, I've learned it's all about the high risk, but also the high returns and the high energy. You simply have to adjust in order to keep pace. When I started out as a journalist, my dream was to open people's minds to the different perspectives. From the CEO in the boardroom to the trader out in the street, we all have different stories. From Accra to Addis Ababa, from Cairo to Cape Town, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Here at CGTN, we realize that Africa is on the move, and it's moving fast, but we're moving right along with it. I'm Ucheo Koronkwo, and I'm a business anchor and reporter at CGTN.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, let's delve into today's business news. A mobile telecom operator, MTN Uganda, has announced intentions to float 20% of its shares on the country's securities exchange. This will potentially be the largest initial public offering on the Ugandan market. CGTN's Michael Baleke reports.
The initial public offering is expected to raise about $1.3 billion. MTN says the offer and listing of the mobile telecom company is in line with MTN Group's localization strategy to drive local ownership in the markets within which the company operates.
We want every individual, every customer to be part and parcel of what we are going to be doing, which is we want them to own a piece of this company.
The mobile telecom operator is present in 21 markets, but MTN Uganda will become the fourth operating market to be publicly listed. Uganda's Capital Markets Authority says the IPO is expected to double the amount of money the capital markets has raised since it was established in 1998. A move expected to grow the economy and create more jobs.
More Ugandans will be able to open and use bank accounts. More Ugandans will be able to open and use mobile money accounts, to use insurance products, and to save for investment and retirement.
The decision by MTN to list is also in line with the policy objectives of the government of Uganda, which require all telecom companies with a national operator's license to list at least 20% of their shares. This follows complaints by the Ugandan president that foreign-owned telecoms are draining the country's scarce foreign exchange reserves through repatriating their profits abroad. The Ugandan leader believes listing on the stock exchange will keep some of the money in the economy. The Uganda Securities Exchange says the MTN initial public offering will be delivered primarily through a digital paperless platform launched recently.
Technology has a big impact on the potential of the markets and also ease of access to the markets by letting everybody at any corner of the country to be able to open an account seamlessly.
MTN Uganda has more than 15 million subscribers and also offers mobile money financial services. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, the World Bank is urging low and middle-income countries to consider restructuring their debt when the debt service suspension initiative expires in the next 3 months. This is to help them sustain economic recovery. The bank says over half of the world's poorest countries are now in external debt distress. It warns that the situation could worsen if commodity prices are volatile, interest rates increase, or investors lose confidence in emerging markets. The bank says when the DSSI expires at the end of this year, low-income countries will resume debt service payments, which would reduce their fiscal capacity. This would in turn limit their ability to purchase vaccines and to finance other priority expenditures. A total of 73 countries are eligible for a temporary suspension of debt service payments owed to their official bilateral creditors. Well, Sudanese government has warned of a looming shortage of essential medicine and strategic goods, including food, after protesters blocked main transport routes for imports. For the past few weeks, protesters in eastern Sudan have blocked movement of supplies from the main port on the Red Sea coast in the city of Port Sudan to pressure Khartoum to implement a number of political demands. They've been demonstrating against what they describe as a deteriorating political and economic conditions in the region. A statement issued by the Sudanese cabinet on Sunday said that preventing transport of essential medicine and goods was a crime against millions of citizens. Well, Zimbabwe's plan to develop a digitally driven and knowledge-based economy has received a major boost following the implementation of a third phase of the National Mobile Broadband Project. CGTN's Farai Mokutia now reports from Harare. The Chinese-funded project aims to significantly improve the country's ICT infrastructure.
Chinese ICT giant Huawei is partnering Zimbabwe state-run mobile network operator Net1 to install 345 new base stations, improve 4G LTE coverage, and introduce 5G technology to a nation that sees information communication technology as crucial.
This strategic project gives impetus to the digitally enabled industrialization and the growth of our economy. The project will undoubtedly help improve economic efficiencies, production and productivity across our economic sectors.
A $71 million facility from China's Exim Bank is funding the expansion. The availability of the latest information communication technology is a catalyst not just for economic growth, but also the attainment of key social development goals. Upon completion, Net1's coverage will increase to 85% of the country, including some previously unserviced remote areas.
The data actually suggests that there's a massive business opportunity even in rural communities because as we are all aware of, the majority of internet users in Zimbabwe access it through their mobile phones. And this is inclusive of rural communities where we also have an increasingly young population. There's a young demographic that has a huge appetite for all forms of multimedia, which are accessed through the internet. Accessing information that relates to agriculture, which is a huge component of the Zimbabwean rural space, as well as education, which has emerged as a huge driver of internet usage over the past year and a half because of what happened with COVID-19.
According to the industry regulator, Zimbabwe experienced a 29.9% increase in mobile internet and data traffic during the first quarter of 2021, with over 90% of users accessing the internet via their mobile phones. The figures are expected to grow as e-learning and working from home become more popular, which makes the now underway network upgrade a key priority. Farai Mwakutuya, CGTN, Harare, Zimbabwe.
Well, mining companies in South Africa are pushing to develop self-reliant power generation capacity due to the persistent unreliability of the country's national power utility, Eskom. They plan to spend up to $2.7 billion to develop 2 gigawatts of renewable energy to supplement Eskom's energy supplies. Here's CGTN's Angela Coppola with that report.
The mining sector supported renewables and the development of green hydrogen as a fuel for this energy-intensive industry. But what impact will these investments have on listed mining stocks?
Even if they were to go for 100, let's just say hypothetically, they were to go 100% self-reliant in terms of power capabilities, but commodity prices fell through the floor. Unfortunately, the investment community would be focused on commodity prices. So I do think that end of the day, commodity prices are the real driver of long-term market caps or share prices, but that's not to take away from the importance of this. This is obviously still very important.
Power is a key component in the mining sector, and it's one of the biggest operating costs.
And we consume in excess of 700 megawatts on a daily basis, which equates to over 7 billion rand, or about 3% of national sales. Eskom's supply to us is predominantly coal-based, and as a result of that, we have an extensive carbon footprint.
Other mining houses are also concerned about consistent power supply in the future.
We're worried about tomorrow's risk, and specifically mid-decade. We think that the country does have a looming supply risk problem, somewhere around 2024, 2025. And we're actually becoming quite concerned about it, more so than we have been historically, in terms of Eskom's ability to meet demand.
Some mines, like Northern Platinum, had decided to generate a portion of their own power before government changed the maximum generation capacity from 10 to 100 megawatts.
The furthest progressed is our 50 megawatt project southwest of Johannesburg. And that project has an identified site that's fully permitted, and we're hoping to reach financial close mid-next year and then begin construction straight thereafter. That plant should come into commercial operation at the end of 2023.
Mining houses take a holistic view about power supply.
It's not just about reducing our carbon footprint, it is actually trying to reduce somewhat our reliance on Eskom in totality. But we are very conscious of the fact that we can't replace Eskom, we can only supplement.
The mining sector is one of the biggest energy users in the country, and with its move to self-generation, it's going to free Eskom up to look after the rest of the country. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, your sport news is coming up after this short break, including 2022 FIFA World Cup qualifiers return with African champions Algeria hosting Niger in Blida.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born to be a player? Could this moment be yours? Sports Scene. Find your game.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
In sport, we kick off with the 2020 FIFA World Cup qualification with the race to make the Qatar finals resuming later this evening across Africa. After the draw with Burkina Faso in Marrakesh last month, African champions Algeria are fully aware they cannot afford to waste more points if they want to qualify to the final and decisive stage of Africa's qualification. The Desert Foxes, who are unbeaten in their last 14 games, will restart their campaign at home this evening against Niger in Group A. Rami Bensabani, Jamel Bilrami and Islam Slimani have all been called up by head coach Jamel Belmadi despite returning from injury and lacking in form. Of their previous 5 matches against Niger, Algeria have won 4 and lost 1.
There's no player who's okay when he's injured, especially mentally, when the injuries come one after the other. But the coach was there. He was sending me messages every day telling me to come back and not to get injured again.
In Group E, the top 2, Mali and Kenya, clash on Thursday in the neutral venue of Morocco. Kenya's Harambee Stars head coach Engin Firat says his charges are going for the upset against their fancied opponents. Kenya, who are already in Morocco, are seeking their first victory after successive draws against East African rivals Uganda and Rwanda in their opening World Cup qualifiers. Mali topped Group E on 4 points after beating Rwanda and drawing against Uganda. The Turkish national Firat, who will handle his first game in charge of Stars, has recalled midfielder Ismail Gonzalez and defender Aboud Omar, who last featured for the team at the 2019 AFCON finals, to his squad. Kenya will host Mali in Nairobi on Sunday in the return fixture of their doubleheader.
It's an honor to come back to national team, and I'm happy. I'm so happy. Mali have a good team, like us, so it's another match. We play and we see what happens. We have a strong team, we have quality, we have power, so why not?
Work on a good squad. We have a good
Anything can happen in football. They have a good squad. We have a good squad too. I believe the national team of Kenya has everything to qualify for the World Cup, just like any other team. That is why we are here, and now we are number 2, and we are aiming to be number 1. These 2 games against Mali will determine, and I think Kenya will surprise many people because at the end of the day, we have been the underdogs for a long time. We were in the African Cup, and now we are going for the World Cup.
Well, elsewhere, Brazilian and British media have been reporting that English Premier League clubs are requesting the early return of their players from South American World Cup qualifiers. Manchester City and Brazil forward Gabriel Jesus spoke about this ahead of their game on Thursday with Venezuela, saying he was not aware of the request and believed that clubs wouldn't do so.
I heard about it today, reading some news. I was not aware. As I said earlier, it was a very tough moment for us that were called. Unfortunately, we were not able to travel last time due to all the reasons that everybody knows. We were cleared to play here this time, to be living in this wonderful environment that we have at the Brazilian national team, to play with this jersey. I believe that this request from the clubs to not play to come back home earlier will not happen. We are here focused on the 3 games in order to do our best and win.
Well, Uruguay are 3rd in the South American group of World Cup qualifying and have 3 tough matches coming up. On Thursday, they are to host Colombia in Montevideo, a direct opponent for a spot at Qatar. 3 days later, they will cross the Rio de la Plata to face Argentina, and then 4 days after that, they will be heading to northern Brazil to face hosts in Manaus. The Uruguay have 15 points from 9 games, 2 points ahead of Ecuador and Colombia in 4th and 5th place, respectively. Colombia also have a difficult schedule, as after Thursday's Uruguay match, they host Brazil on Sunday, then Ecuador on the 14th of October. The 2017 World Athletics Cross Country Championship was Uganda's first and only major athletics international sporting event. The event introduced the world to some of the country's best athletes like Joshua Cheptegei and Jacob Kiplimo. But beyond the athletic success, what kind of legacy did hosting the event bring to Uganda? CGTN's Lian Sayanga tells us more.
Uganda has a mixed history of hosting sports competitions, but not many have come bigger than the Kampala 2017 World Cross Country Championships. Over 500 international athletes converged on the Ugandan capital. Speaking during the pre-race conference at the time, World Athletics President Sebastian Coe hailed the event as a game changer for the East African nation.
This is a big moment. It's a big moment for Uganda because this is the first time Uganda has hosted a World Athletics Series event. This is a big moment for Africa.
A big moment indeed. The camaraderie was immeasurable, the competition immense. Hosting the event, many believed would uplift Uganda's reputation for occasionally staging sporting spectacles. More than 4 years later, the city of Kampala has moved on. There is very little evidence that it once hosted the event. This building hosted the championship's secretariat. The signage, one of the very few reminders that the World Cross Country Championships was held here. The government invested over $1.7 million to host the event. According to the World Athletics post-event report, Uganda earned $3.6 million, both in terms of tourism and physical activity. There was no lasting infrastructure impact.
If the infrastructure wasn't improved after what everyone saw Uganda do at the World Cross Country in 2017, then there we missed a step. I think if we had put in more effort, try to vote for a facility, let it be, even if it's a tartan, just a tartan of 100 meters somewhere, even if it's not 400 meters, I believe the impact is huge. But certainly that wasn't done.
Uganda took third place overall in the medal standings behind Ethiopia and eventual winners Kenya. That put a kick into what has since been a spell of successes. Since the 2017 showpiece, Ugandan athletes have won at least 13 individual medals at Global Athletics Championships.
Most of the people who have won these medals were actually part of either the teams or an integral part of preparing the athletes who took part in Kololo. So I think that has gone on to inspire quite a number of athletes in one way or another.
One of them is Joshua Cheptegei. The 2017 event was one of his lowest career moments. He led the 10-kilometer race, only to collapse on the final stretch. He finished 30th. But since then, he has risen to become a world and Olympic champion. Cheptegei says more work needs to be put in to harness the country's potential.
Over the last years, I have dedicated my earnings from the track towards the construction of a training center that is built to international standards and can act as a vehicle for the young athletics talent in Uganda and beyond to achieve their dreams, like mine of winning the gold.
The 2017 sporting event remains Uganda's watershed moment. Heroes were born and a generation of athletes were inspired to aim for greatness. Leon Senyange, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Well, that's it for this edition of Africa Live. Remember that you can send your feedback to contacts on the screen and follow us on digital media platforms. From me, Hannah Viviers, and the rest of the Africa Live team, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next time.